Hello everyone, it's me, Chaff Commander Coffee, and I'm here today to do my full review of Humankind. It's been a week since it released, and I've been playing pretty intensely, 6-hour streams every day. I've been keeping up with the communities, the Discords, the Reddit, YouTube, Twitch, and the general just, getting involved with the game. I've been playing a lot of runs on the Humankind difficulty, which is the highest difficulty in the game. Pretty much entirely single player. I haven't touched the multiplayer yet, so if you're looking for a review about the multiplayer of the game, can't give that yet. Apologies, but I really wanted to invest myself in the single player of the game before I got stuck in with any multiplayer later down the line. And for those of you that are, not so interested in playing on the highest difficulty, just want more casual games, some of my commentary might not be applicable, but the general stuff for all people, when I'm talking about elements of the game that affects everyone, regardless of what they're playing, that will still be relevant. So I like to think I've got enough experience from the open devs, the Lucy and the Victor open dev, and the actual release week now, as well as some more technical understanding of the game, given that I have a bit of a history, not on the channel, but from my just general gaming of Amplitude's other titles, being Endless Legend and Endless Space. So I'm hoping I can give a pretty decent sort of all-round review of the game. And hopefully people will, find it useful. It's not a totally positive review, I'll start off by saying that. But it's also far from negative. So, starting off, graphics, sound. The things that you immediately get hit by on starting the game. Graphically, the game looks amazing. As far as 4Xs go, it is probably the prettiest looking, both in terms of how it tries to realistically represent things, with also how everything looks. The clarity is really nice. Some people find it a bit more difficult to see what districts do what. But graphically speaking, everything looks good. Very, very nice graphics. Soundtrack is phenomenal, though I have had, and other people have had issues with the sound cutting out at times. If you play the game for a long period of time in one go, like 3-4 hours at a time, then sometimes the audio rate can drop. But generally speaking, the graphics are really good and the soundtrack is really good. There are just a couple of issues with the sound. If you relaunch the game, it fixes it, so it's like a very easy fix. I'm sure they'll patch it out sooner or later. That is going to be a recurring trend in this review, by the way. There are bugs, but we're hoping they patch them out sooner rather than later, which I have faith that Amplitude will, because I've played their previous titles and I know kind of how their releases tend to go. But yeah. One thing I will say for the graphics is I would like to see more variance with the districts. Like, these are both market districts and they look identical, which it'd be cool if there was more variation with them, but that's like a very, very minor gripe. I mean, with the emblematic quarters and, the features do change based on, like, oh, there's a river here running through there. And there is a little bit of a difference between the garrisons down here, but I'd like to see more, like, visually obvious changes for the districts over the even like this compared to this market district. When you compare the market district to the industry district, if I turn off the yields here, that's a market district, that's an industry district. And if you're not used to the color scheming that they use in Amplitude's titles, you might not be able to immediately tell that these are different districts. So I would like to see more graphical fidelity when it comes to the variance of the districts. But that's a very minor thing. I wouldn't call that a serious issue at all. That's more of a preference thing anyway, because otherwise the graphics looks very nice. So those two are the most obvious things on getting into the game immediately. So they're good. Mechanically speaking, I enjoy the systems a lot. If you're a fan of any of Amplitude's previous titles, which is Endless Legend, Endless Space, they have innovated on some of their old systems, and they've, rehashed some stuff that you know, like the districts out of Endless Legend. They've rehashed them, but they've changed them. The FIMS system, I'm going to still call it FIGS, but the way they handle food industry, gold, science, and influence, the way that these interact with each other has been changed from previous titles. Not drastically so, but I think in general the mechanics have gone in a good direction since Amplitude's other titles. If you're coming from other 4X backgrounds, for example, maybe you're a fan of Paradox games, or you're a fan of Civilization. I myself, you know, I've done lots of Civ 4 on the channel. You're probably going to be most familiar with this if you play Civ 5, not Civ 6. I think Civ 5 players will be more familiar with Amplitude. Like, they'll find it easier to pick up Amplitude stuff than Civ 6. Purely because of the representation of mechanics. I feel like with Civ 6, people probably have very different expectations. Like, Civ 6 has a lot of, well, I say a lot of, it has unique aspects to its mechanics that, whereas the similarities between Civ 5 and Humankind, I think, are more directly relatable. But, yeah, mechanically speaking, the game is solid. However, and this is a caveat I'm sure many people have reiterated many times before, some people find the UI really daunting and very hard to get the hang of. Now, as someone who's played Amplitude's other titles, I kind of know where to look for things from experience. And even then, sometimes I'm like, where is this information I'm looking for? And there has been a few bugs with the UI, particularly the religion screen. So it's far from flawless, and for people who aren't used to Amplitude's titles, it can be awkward, it can be obscure, and generally it can be kind of unhelpful. Now, I will be doing tutorials in the future to try help people get used to the systems overall. But yeah, it's something that I wouldn't blame people for being turned off by the UI at all. It is pretty daunting, especially if you're not used to Amplitude's tiles. And it needs a lot of work. It does need work. There's already been a beta patch for the game, which I'm currently running, which has changed some of the UI features for outposts and stuff. I can't really show them off because I don't have any outposts in this run, but I'd rather talk about the UI as like more of a general thing. So they are working on it, but it's far from ready. Far from ready for, like, I say ready. It works. You know, everything works in it, but it's just far from user friendly. So if you're like a casual gamer, you're not really very sure about 4Xs. You haven't really played 4Xs before. You haven't played Civilization. You haven't played Amplitude's other games like Endless Space, Endless Legend. You haven't played like a Paradox game. If you jump into this with no real experience from 4X or strategy, you probably won't know how to figure the stuff out. You won't know where to start. So, at least on that level, that's I'd like to make that clear. The game's real shining point, in my opinion, in terms of mechanics, is the combat. I really, really like the combat in Humankind. The combat is probably one of the best examples of, I've even got a fight going on over here. I'm a big fan of Humankind's combat system. It's got the reinforcement mechanics, the way later era units can interact with ongoing battles like long range artillery, aircraft, the way, the way you fight battles changes drastically from era to era, particularly when gunpowder is, revolutionizes warfare. Like, it feels very good. And out of all the 4Xs I've played, the combat in Humankind stands up as its, like, golden feature, in my opinion. I am a very military-focused player of these games, so I will, try to be aggressive, build large armies, that kind of thing. So I personally am very drawn by that. And if you've wanted to find a 4X with a good combat system, if you've come from Civ Civilization or Amplitude's other games, it is phenomenally better. And you know, I've been playing Civ 4. I've played it literally this year. I've been playing Civ 4 4 years since it came out up till now. Very, very long time. I couldn't get to Civ 5. I really disliked what they did with the single unit per tile. I know some people hated the death stacks, but I mean, I play mods which change that around a bit, and I know there's some mods with Civ 5 that change it a bit, and they were a lot more tolerable. And Civ 6 as well. I feel like the scale, and this is something I want to talk about, especially with Humankind, because there's another golden point that I love about Humankind. The scale of combat is so much better in Humankind than it's portrayed in other 4X games. And in general, Humankind's scale is so much better. Over the years, I feel like from Civ 4 to Civ 5 to Civ 6, especially Civ 6, everything feels small. I don't know if it's one unit per tile or like the way they handle their districts, but everything feels small. And the presentation of things, it feels like kind of like everything has to be really cramped together, yeah? The way that Humankind handles outposts and cities where you attach different territories, like for example, this city of Sipar actually owns this island, which there's loads of free space on. But it also owns this territory all the way up here, up to this coastline. The scale is so much better, right? It feels big. It feels big, and even building cities like one of my more industrialized cities down here of my Keen. I'm building a lot more districts over here. It feels like grand. It's got a much grander scale to it. And that really helps with the atmosphere of the game, right? Now, Humankind doesn't take itself super seriously with the narrator. I quite like the narrator, but I think after a while, people probably will get fed up with him saying the same stuff, but you can turn him off easily enough. So, he's fun to have and hear the witty one-liners for a bit. So, props for that. But yeah, the scale of everything, even though it is grand, Humankind doesn't take itself, like, uber seriously. So it's still got that sort of aesthetic appeal, which is nice, but it's still like it's not like unrealistic. It still tries to be relatively realistic, and it makes things feel epic, like you're reliving the history of these civilizations on a big scope, on a grand scale, and that is, atmospherically speaking, the atmosphere of the game, and the graphics, the sound, it all plays into it. It's really good. It is absolutely just hit the right notes in every way to get that scope. Very, very nice. Now, obviously, this isn't a perfect review. Criticisms that I have, major criticisms I have. Firstly, the Navy. Now, I don't know what it is about 4Xs, but there's two things that 4Xs can never get right, and I don't know why this is. Navies feel useless, or they underperform, and espionage. Now, there is no espionage in Humankind, so I don't need to touch on that. But navies in Humankind suck. They don't really have enough impact on warfare. They don't really have any diplomatic impact either. Honestly, they just need changing. They did make some good changes from Victor, where they made transports a lot weaker. So if your transports come up against actual naval warfare ships, they will get destroyed very, very easily. But that being said, until the industrial era, which is along most of the game, right? Until the industrial era, ships can't really do anything, right? They can only sail along coast. They can't engage on land battles. Like, they can't attack coast to coast, right? Which I feel would be a big change that would help navies feel relevant, is just let them attack coast to coast. They can't engage battles either. Like, you couldn't have a fleet attack a city or blockade, like having an option to blockade coastal tiles or like ransack their harbors and stuff. You can ransack their harbors whilst you're at war, but blockading their tiles so they don't get yields from them, that sort of thing, whilst you're at peace would be cool. I'd like that. Being able to, like, I don't know, like pirate trade, like because you can go on a trade node and ransack it, and it kind of just destroys the trade link entirely. It'd be cool if you could like pirate it, so you could like take part of its value rather than like burning it or like trying to destroy it. Because how do you destroy a naval trade route? It's just where ships go. So you can pirate some of them, but some of them are bound to get through. It's not like the entire fleet of traders gets destroyed, right? So it'd be cool if they changed it so like you would pirate part of the trade, and then you siphon the income back to your empire. That would be cool. I'd also like if ships could place outposts on coastline, not inland, but on coastline. I think that would be really nice and help with colonization and like, because like right now we've got the Phoenicians who are famous for colonization across the Mediterranean, and you can't actually get transports in the ancient era. You actually have to get classical era tech to do that. So the Phoenicians can't even colonize overseas, even though that's kind of like historically what they did, which is very strange. And it would be really cool if ships just had the ability to put outposts on coasts. They could even make it more expensive to do that, but it would just, it would just make navies that much more relevant. And I'd really like to see that. So navies, it's a thumbs down from me. They don't have much purpose, which does kind of suck, and I hope they change it, or modders will change it eventually, which is another thing I want to talk about. But currently, Secondly, the mod kit. The mod kit was not released on the release of Humankind, and I feel like a lot of the problems players have had with like bugs, and I'll come to bugs later, with bugs or like features or balance or whatever, if people had the mod kit at release, Amplitude would have to do half the work that they're currently having to do because players would just do it for them. Now, should games companies let players do the work for them? Well, no, but that being said, a lot of people want the mod kit. They want to work on the game. They want to be able to make their own changes. And giving players the tools to do that would actually help Amplitude also balance the game and make, more wide sweeping changes a bit faster. Because they could see how players were doing it with mods, and then they could perhaps implement that in a official patch without, crediting the modder or talking to them beforehand or whatever. But also just it helps keep interest in the game. I think a lot of people have already played. I know streamers have already played like a week of the game and they've already dropped it to go back to play Civ or whatever. Maybe it's because they prefer Civ, maybe it's because of the bugs, but I think if the mod kit was already available, it's going to give the game a lot more longevity, so I'm really hoping they get the mod kit out soon, but currently it isn't, so I do have to mention that, because again, this is for those of you checking this in the future, this review is the week after the game released, so obviously much will have changed if you're watching this like months into the future. But as of now, this is the state of the game. And speaking of the state of the game, bugs. I've only encountered one game-breaking bug that actually soft-locked me out of the game. There is a workaround to it, and they've just recently released a beta patch, so I will state that Amplitude has already released their first major patch for the game. It is a beta branch, 1 week in, and having played Amplitude's other titles, I know that Amplitude will not drop Humankind. They will continue to work on this game for years, so anything that is a bug now will not exist in the future. I can say that for certain. So they have my confidence, but that doesn't mean that they delivered on release. Bugs-wise, there have been many. As I said, the audio kind of gets a bit choppy at times if you play for too long. I've had end turn has stalled for lengths of time. It's just kind of stalled, and I'd had to quick save, quick load, which doesn't take very long. Me personally, it doesn't bother me that much. Other people, it will get much more frustrating and much quicker. Me, I don't really care. I just reload the game, whatever. But I would be neglecting the point of a review if I didn't mention that, and I'm sure that will irritate some people. And it does get a little bit irritating, but yeah, again, I'm pretty relaxed, so I'll just reload the game. But yeah, the game can hang at the end of turns. I don't know what causes that. Sometimes in combat, your units, their animation won't play correctly, and then the combat hangs for like, sometimes it won't resolve, sometimes it will resolve itself after like 10, 20, 30 seconds, which can be a bit annoying as well. What other things were there? I've had peace deals where the AI was at 100 war support. So if we look here, I actually have a war going on. Normally you can't force a peace deal until they have 0 war support. I actually had a war in a previous run where I had 100 war support, they had 100 war support, and it forced a peace deal where I got to take things from the AI. And I was like, I don't want to do this because it's an exploit. But once you have a forced surrender, basically when the game forces you into a surrender scenario, either you surrender to the AI or the AI surrenders to you. Not when they offer surrender, because they could like offer surrender. It's not that. It's when the game actually forces a surrender because they've ran out of war support. They actually forced a surrender at 100 war support, and I had to accept it, or else it wouldn't let me end the turn because I have to go through the process of that. So that actually forced me to restart that because it felt like an exploit. So because during that war I claimed like 8 or 9 provinces, and I got to take them all without fighting for them, which was ridiculous. So I had to restart that run because it felt like an exploit to me. The auto explore, I'm sure people have seen the videos about this with the auto explore. I'm pretty sure it's a bug where basically the players got the same auto explore AI as the AI, so it basically beelines for goodie huts in the most efficient manner possible. I believe that's a bug. I haven't been using it in my runs and I've been doing just fine, but it is a bug, and I don't know how they didn't notice it, but maybe it is intentional. I haven't heard anything from Amplitude about it being intentional or them coming out and going, yeah, by the way, that is how it's supposed to work. I've seen people have put in the videos up about it, but yeah, so there's another bug. I haven't had any issues with movement bugs. I haven't had any issues with building. Not so far as I can remember. I haven't had any corrupted save games. I did have a bug where the avatar changed after I reloaded the game, which was really weird, but I couldn't figure out what caused that. So yeah. Those are sort of the main bugs I came up with. The game has just released, so there's always a few bugs in a game, but to run into these many within the release week, sometimes you think, Amplitude, maybe you should have just carried on developing the game for a few more months. But, you know, they'd built up so much hype and they'd already delayed the game a couple of times. I reckon the studio probably either they forced it out or they thought we'll work on it post-release. But that has hurt people's expectations of the game, and I'm going to be honest about the game. It does have bugs. Now, do I think those bugs will exist by Christmas? No. I reckon Amplitude will have fixed it all by Christmas. So if you're unsure about getting the game in its current state because it is buggy, and it is, then just wait till Christmas and pick it up then. That would be literally my best advice. Do I recommend the game? Absolutely. I do absolutely recommend the game. I think it's a phenomenal 4X and it's got a lot of potential, and it's going to be it's only going to go up from here. It's only going to go up. So I would say if you're apprehensive about picking it up right now because of bugs, because of balance, just wait till Christmas, see how it looks, because I reckon it will be a lot better by then. Other features I want to talk about, the CIVICS system. I'd very much like it if it actually told you what would unlock the CIVICS. I really don't like this hidden mechanic. Now, that is me being a bit gamey. I know it's supposed to be narrative that, after certain conditions are met, you unlock the civic, because humanity doesn't just magically think things up. There has to be conditions for our interactions with society, government, laws, war, etc. We have to actually engage before we think of new ways to handle them. I get that. That's cool. However, it's a ball ache, and I don't like it from a game perspective. And even if it was just like an option, like here, like reveal, like just a little toggle where you could just reveal the requirements of the CIVICS. Especially playing on the higher difficulty, there are certain CIVICS which I believe are kind of necessary for a good run or optimal gameplay, as it were. And not knowing the exact requirements for those civics is very awkward. So that's one thing I'd like to say. The religion system, oh boy. Some people have had some real issues with religion. They really don't like it. They think it's like either unbalanced or too weak, and it doesn't have any impact. Or my biggest gripe with religion is that there's not enough ways to interact with it. Like, getting tenets is cool. I like this. Some of them are better than others. Some are not very useful at all. That's a balancing, but it's like something that will get tweaked over time. My big issue with faith is that there's not enough ways to interact with it, right? Faith exists on the map, and it spreads automatically based on factors to do with faith generation. But there's no ways you can really, like, there's no diplomacy options for faith. There's grievances. You can get grievances for people following other faiths or, like, holding territory that's converted by your faith. What I mean is, like, treaties of religious, like, freedoms or declaring other, like, faiths as heretic, and then it's more like a theological kind of holy war as opposed to just like a national war. So it's like our faith doesn't like actually denounces your faith, so it would affect the spread of like, because currently this is what spread looks like. It tells you where the influences are coming from, right, and where they're going, but that's it. That's kind of it. And there's not much you can do beyond building holy sites or emblematic quarters to affect that. I'd like there to be more in the system to actually affect its spread and ways that you can manipulate it to actually make it part of your civ. There are, of course, civics that affect religion, but again, I don't freaking know how to unlock them. Sometimes they unlock, sometimes they don't. There has been a few bugs with civics just straight up not unlocking for people, but I don't know because it doesn't tell me how to get them. So, and that's not a UI bug, that is a design choice, and I just think it's an incorrect design choice of the developers to just make these, so you can't see them. In theory, on paper, it's cool. It's narratively cool, but it's just kind of frustrating from a gameplay perspective. So I wish they changed that. Again, with religion, if there was a generic faith district, right? If there's a generic sort of temple district that I could build to help generate faith and increase the pressure of it, that would help with feeling like I can interact with the system. There are certain emblematic quarters for certain cultures that do generate faith, but I feel like a generic one would also help. And it would add more infrastructure to the game that you could then build to help with faith generation, or ways that other districts would get infrastructure that plays off of faith districts, making it kind of like a generic district that affects like everything, but only if it has like under certain parameters. I think that would be a cool aspect, like kind of how like the commons, you build this next to other districts and it gives extra stability per adjacent districts. It'd be cool if the Faith District did the same, but with different values. That would be cool. I'd like that. So yeah, religion, civics, they could do some work. As far as science goes, I actually think the tech tree is fine. Some people don't like the dead ends in the tech tree. They don't lead to anything. For example, craftsmanship here, you don't actually need to research this to actually progress, and you just never need to do this, basically. It does technically, these do upgrade into later game infrastructure, but technically you never have to research this. And the same with mounted warfare. Technically, you never have to research mounted warfare. Some people don't like the dead ends because they find it a bit weird. I don't think it's necessarily weird, but at the same time, I mean, it would be fine if mounted warfare led into siege tactics, but like they both did, and then you could just tech either of them, and then you could skip this if you really don't want it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could link the tech tree up without like removing any like Like sailing does lead to trade expeditions. You need sailing for that, and you also need wheel. Uh, Organized warfare is required for fortifications, but fortifications doesn't lead anywhere. Fortifications, it would make sense if fortifications led to siege tactics, you know, because if you build walls, you have to learn to knock them down, right? Makes sense? So there could be more interplay in the research tree, but generally speaking, I think the research tree is fine. It's not too big, it's not too complicated or like cramped full of stuff. I actually do really enjoy very large research trees as well, and some people might feel it's too thin, like there's not enough text. But I think it's a good middle ground, and the text, once you get to the contemporary, there's actually a hell of a lot of text. Early on in the game, there's less text, and as you go further in, there's more text. So I think it's fine. It's fine as it is, but it could do with a little bit of work. What else? I think I've pretty much covered everything. Oh, cultures. So a big part of balance is the era stars and cultures. The only era star I've had troubles with is expansion. I think this requires too much. But besides that, I actually really like the fame system. The fame system is really good for alternate win conditions and like awarding the player for doing different objectives in each era. It's flexible, it's versatile, and overall, I just really like the fame system. And I know a lot of people don't like that you change culture every era. I think it's one of the most innovative ways to handle culture and, you know, picking a civilization in a 4X title. Now, it doesn't have the narrative feeling of the Amplitude's previous titles, the Endless titles, Endless Space, Endless Legend, where each race or culture had an entire storyline, unique storyline associated with it. But it's more replayable because it doesn't have that unique narrative associated with it. It's more generic, and I know a lot of people don't like that it's generic, but a lot of people also do like that it's generic. I prefer it that it's generic because it has more replayability. Now, some people don't like, they feel like their immersion's broken when they swap cultures. I don't really like either that happens to you or it doesn't. I mean, I personally really like the idea of swapping cultures. From a gameplay perspective, like mixing and matching different cultures to get different play styles and benefits, shoring up a weakness in your empire or pushing a strength of your empire even further. I really like that aspect. And also, in my opinion, from a narrative perspective, like as someone from England, from the UK, our culture, you know, the English culture came from invading civilizations, which then developed a new culture off of the back of that. And that happens in history, you know, throughout history. Empires rise and fall, and from the ruins of those empires, new cultures rise up where they take parts of the old culture and they embrace it into something different. Just using the English as an example, the English were a mixture, well, mostly Germanic tribes. So I guess in Humankind, that's like the Goths are like representative of that. But then we got invaded by the Normans, and that was like a mixture of Frankish culture. I don't know why obviously it kind of extrapolates the history, so it covers a wider era. So the medieval era is actually a very, very wide era from different picking cultures from different time periods in that era. But yeah, like, so we were a mixture of different cultures, and I think I like that. Like, you mix cultures together to make this sort of unique aspect to your empire's development. I really like it, but some people don't. That's fair enough. I like it. Right. I don't want this review to go on forever, and I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover as like a big deal with the game. I suppose the last closing statement I should have is about difficulty, because I do play on the hardest difficulty. Is it too easy or is it too hard? I actually really like the challenge. I don't think it's too easy. I feel like once you get the hang of it, you can be more consistent. And obviously with most, as is the case with most 4Xs, the the early game is the hardest part, and once you get past the early game, it leads to the player snowballing due to using correct tactics, strategies, and just decision making. But does the AI put up a fight? Yes, they do. I've had very good fun playing the warfare in the ancient, classical, medieval, early modern. Haven't done too much of the warfare with the industrial and the contemporary yet. Though I did have a run where I was fighting people in the contemporary era with tanks, and the AI also had contemporary era units. So the AI, and that is something that the beta patch most recently has said that it has worked on, is that the AI is keeping up with, they've improved the AI's ability to keep up with military development and upgrades, which is good because, you know, so they don't run around with a bunch of obsolete units, which I didn't see a huge amount of, but shoring up that asset of, or that facet, I should say, not asset, that facet of warfare is good. But is the AI difficult? I mean, I've heard people on Discord saying that they can't handle it on nation difficulty. I've heard people saying they've finished it on Empire, and I've got people in the community that have finished it on Humankind, and I myself play it on Humankind. So, is it challenging? Yes. If you've played 4Xs or not played 4Xs, you will find a challenge in Humankind. And is that good? Is it a good challenge, or does it feel like a fake challenge? It feels like a real challenge. It doesn't feel like fake. Yes, the AI will get buffs if you put it on the higher difficulties, but does it feel unfair? No. Even though Humankind difficulty gives all the enemy units +2 strength, do I feel combat is unfair? No. It just encourages you to use strategy more. And if you use correct strategy, you can overcome even superior numbers, which I have shown multiple times on my stream. Is the building unfair? Well, here's the size of my city over here. This is size 39 on turn 134. If we go take a look at one of the AI cities, size 39. Now, this has a lot less territory, but, you know, is it unfair? This is their capital. This is their... Byblos would have been their capital from the very earliest stage of the game. It's got a bunch of territories attached to it, so it's much bigger. But their other cities are actually much more comparable. And I'm, again, playing on the highest difficulty. And then you've got, like, you know, cultures like here in Nasa, it's only population 13. Over here, we've got Sus. Everybody loves Sus. That's only population 22. So, does it feel fair? Yeah. You know, some of my cities, my real mega cities here, you know, this city's got the pyramids. It's built some market quarters and some garrisons in this territory. I've built my harbour and a bunch of my military garrisons in this territory, as well as some more farming. I've got a lot of market districts coming up, so it's going to be my sort of commerce hub of my empire. This is actually, you know, this is pretty reasonable, and I think, like, compared to the AI, it stands up. You know, it stands on its two, and my other cities do as well. You know, like my I've got Sipar here, size 27. Kiss is size 22. Babylon, which is my capital, size 35. They all stand up compared to the AI. So if you like Builder, you can keep up with the highest level of AI. If you like Military, you can keep up with the highest level of the AI. It doesn't feel unfair. So big thumbs up from me on the difficulty. It's challenging without being unfair, and it's reasonably paced that if you have a bad run, you don't feel like, oh, you know, that was just the AI. A bad run can be because of the map, it can be because maybe early on you made some decisions that were incorrect and it just didn't go very well from there. It doesn't just feel like the AI is punishing you or destroying you for everything that happens. Sometimes the game does feel like it's on you, or it's on the more RNG elements, which is a good thing, because if it was all about just the AI just dominating you all the time, then it wouldn't feel as rewarding, you know, because yeah, sure, beating a really tough AI is great, but you also need to be able to master the RNG elements and also perfect your decision making to be really good, yeah? and I think the game rewards that, or at least it feels like you get a sense of reward from that. So yeah, I think Humankind difficulty, or not just the Humankind difficulty, but the difficulty of the game Humankind, is in a good spot for all levels of players. Now, I have played the lower difficulties. I've only played the higher level difficulties, but I've spoken to people in the community. I've had people on the stream come in and tell me about how they're playing, and the different strategies that work, the different things people like to try, what people think is OP, not OP. It's very different. Nobody's solved the game yet, and I think it's in a good spot currently in terms of people trying stuff out. Does that mean everything's balanced? Some of the cultures are a bit weaker than others, in my opinion, but they all have their place. I think they all have their place, and there's things that they excel at and things that they don't do very well. There are some cultures which excel too much at certain things, which does make them feel oppressive. But these are all things that can get tweaked out and ironed out over time as Amplitude gets more data, as the players get more experience, and they understand what is good and what is not good. I'm by no means an expert, though I've played enough to consider myself experienced, right? I know Amplitude systems, I know kind of what to expect and this sort of stuff. So I'd like to say that my opinion at least matters a little bit. It's by no means always correct, but in terms of balance, I'd like to say I've got at least a bit of a grasp on how things work. So, to sum it all up, would I recommend Humankind? Yes. Yes, I would recommend Humankind. Would I recommend it in its current state? Maybe. If you want to support Amplitude, and you need a reassurance that Humankind is going to get better, I'll tell you now, it's gonna get better. Don't worry, they will fix it. They're not gonna drop the game. They're gonna push patches out. They're gonna balance things. The mod kit's gonna come out. They will eventually do DLC for the game, I imagine. And Amplitude has they generally speaking do more like larger DLC with more impactful changes as opposed to like small, like here's a few cultures. I don't think they'll do anything like that. Hey, maybe they'll prove me wrong, and then I'll have to do another video where I lament that they've actually taken on the practice of like Paradox style DLCs. As someone who plays Paradox games, I can say that. I'm allowed to say that. Okay. But yeah, so I think that I can say with confidence and assure people that it is gonna get better. Would I recommend people get it right now? Again, if you want to support Amplitude, do go out and grab it now. You might run into some bugs, but you're gonna have at least a couple of runs, and you're gonna be able to play plenty of the game without any bugs, without things cropping up and going, oh, that's annoying. You might have to reload a couple of times, but it's hardly the end of the world, and you're gonna get a lot of fun out of it. I've already got my money's worth as far as I'm concerned, in terms of like time played, right? And I intend to play a lot more. If you're still apprehensive and you don't want to go buying a game which has bugs, and I can totally understand that, and I actually encourage that, like Amplitude probably could have kept the game on the back burner for a bit longer whilst they iron stuff out, but it's here, and that's how it is. By Christmas, I reckon all of the bugs that people have been complaining about will be gone. Now, I don't want to guarantee that, but I have faith. I have faith that Amplitude will fix all of the bugs that have currently been an issue plaguing the community by Christmas. So if you're still not certain about the game and you want to wait and see what it's like, wait till Christmas. There's a couple more months. By then the mod kit might be out, probably be out. I don't know how far they got along with it, but hopefully the mod kit's out by Christmas. Hopefully they've had more balance patches and passes of the game balance and bug fixes. So you can pick it up then, and whoop-de-doo, game will be done. What would I give this as a total? I don't like to rate things on a scale. There are certain, like, if I was to say, is the soundtrack good? Yeah, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, right? But do I want to give the overall game a rating out of 10? Nah, not really. I'm just going to say that there are elements of the game that are fantastic. They're very innovative. But it is held back by the fact that its launch has not been quite so smooth. It does have bugs, but I hope they'll get changed. And, balance will be made, fixes will come in. That is my honest review of the game. And this is someone who's going to invest a lot more time into making content for Humankind. So obviously I want more people to play the game because I'm going to be making content for it, and I truly believe it's a good game. But, you know, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say the game's perfect, because it's not. Do I hope it will eventually become perfect? Yes, and I have faith that this game will eventually take over, in terms, at least in my opinion, 4Xs for the foreseeable future. So Amplitude gets my thumbs up, you know? Keep at it, guys. If any of the devs watch this, or, you know, any of the dudes working on the game, like, keep at it. I have faith that you're going to make this fantastic, even better than it already is. And for anyone that's thinking about trying the game out, recommend you give it a go, but if you want to wait till Christmas, I can't blame you. I won't blame you for waiting till Christmas. But it's going to get better from here. Okay, guys. Thank you all for watching. I know this is a bit longer than most of my other videos, and I've actually been a bit sniffly during it. I don't know why that is, but, you know, I actually had to, this is my second take. The first take, I kept sneezing. So I was just like, oh, I'm going to have to redo it now, because I kept sneezing throughout it. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, if you watched it up to this point. I know it's a bit long. This week I'll be doing more tutorials, and I'll probably try and get some Let's Plays going for YouTube as well. I've been focusing on doing a lot of very lengthy Twitch streams for the game, so, you know, my time has been split. But I'm going to be trying to do Let's Plays and tutorials and tier lists, and if you want more Humankind content, don't worry, this is going to be the place to get it. If you want to keep up with the game, even if you don't want to buy it right now, you want to see how things go, I will be covering content for Humankind for a very long time. So don't worry, guys, I've got a lot of stuff planned. It's been me, Chaff Come On Coffee. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.